Hello and welcome. Let me get straight to it. We are here with Abhijit Banerjee, who, unless you live under a rock, would know has won the Nobel Prize for Economics, along with Esther Duflo, who happens to be his wife, and Michael Kremer, for their work in experiment-based approaches to tackling poverty. And by a happy coincidence, Abhijit Banerjee is here in India with his new book, Good Economics for Hard Times, co-authored by him and Esther Duflo, which is a sort of a sequel to their bestseller, Poor Economics, which outlined their prescription for tackling some of the great challenges of our times. Thank you very much indeed, Abhijit, for being with us, and many congratulations.
Thank you.
I think you may have figured out by now that if you were in India waking up to the news, it was pretty much that Abhijit Banerjee has won the Nobel Prize. I don't think there was anyone else in the picture. So.
And likewise in France. In France, the headline was Esther Duflo and spouse and somebody else. Not even name. Yeah.
But there was a lot of, especially on social media and elsewhere, that this was coming. A lot of people said that this was expected.
People say,
I know, but did you see it coming?
No. I mean, you know.
Are you being modest?
No. I mean, you know, I did. If you told me that in the next 30 years it might come, I would not say, yeah, I would say possibly.
Right.
If you said this year it will come, I would say, you're kidding me?
Right. Yes, it seems to have come perhaps faster than some.
Yeah,
than
I mean,
you or perhaps some people
46.
expected.
It's not it's an unusual age to get the Nobel Prize.
It is. It's fantastic.
In economics. So, you know, I think we figured that, you know, it wasn't around the corner.
Right. But I heard that you were fairly, I don't know if blasé is the right word when you got the call, that you got the call and then you received it and then you went back to sleep. Is that true?
Yeah, I figured, they told me I was not needed. They said explicitly that Esther, as the woman, and since women don't get the prize at all, needs to be the spokesperson for all three of us in this press conference.
Okay.
Which meant I didn't need to be there, so why not?
So what time did the call come?
4:45.
In the morning?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I went to sleep at the right time, which is at 5 or something.
So you got the news and then you just went back to sleep and said, Esther, handle the rest pretty much.
I wasn't, it was not discrimination against Esther. It was, they told us.
Oh, that's how they laid it down.
Explicitly that Esther has to do it. I wasn't invited to that party.
Okay. That's funny. Now, with all the deluge of praise that came immediately after the news broke here in India, and most of it was in real time, there was one particular congratulatory message that was somewhat with a pause, a pregnant pause, and that was the Prime Minister of India that came 4 hours later. Were you surprised at all by that, or did you even notice?
No. I mean, you know, I think the Prime Minister of India has many things to do. I assume this is not on his front burner. I hope not. I am sure he has better things to do.
But at the same time, Abhijit, you are aware that you've been very outspoken in your critique of the state of the Indian economy. And this was in fact just a very short while before you got the Nobel, where you and Raghuram Rajan were at the Jindal lecture series and you intervened after he spoke. And you described the economy in a state of crisis.
Yeah.
Is that a fair characterization?
No, it was my exact words, so I can't take them back.
You stand by that the Indian economy is in a state of crisis?
I think I said something like, you have to take seriously the idea that the economy is in a crisis. I think if you look at that one number that jumps out at me from, you know, the analysis of the NSS data, which is sort of average consumption in India, we are slightly lower today than it was in 2014-15.
Right.
That's an unprecedented.
That's the alarm bell for you.
That's an unprecedented event. We can argue about GDP data, but this is the same thing we've been measuring over and over and over.
Right.
It doesn't go down. It goes up every year. You know, the average.
So you're saying consumption was really the red flag out of all the other negative data which is coming our way. But you know, I was going through your comments at the lecture, and you cited, of course, a number of reasons that could have led us to this point, which includes demonetization, the implementation of GST, not raising farm wages enough, and so on and so forth. But you also pointed to certain political aspects which perhaps has irked the regime, where you said that a lot of the decision making has become PMO driven by the Prime Minister's office.
Yeah, so
Explain that.
I think that whether or not the Prime Minister intends it, I think people in decision making, in places of decision making authority, seem to be looking over their shoulder and thinking, look, should I take this decision? There's a lot of, I think, my sense of just maybe fear of, if I make a mistake, do I get punished for it? If it's perceived that this was not the right decision, I do think that there is important to reassure people that mistakes are part and parcel of decision making, and that there needs to be more forbearance against that. I feel like there's heard of examples of CBI investigations, etc. That's probably worrying them. I do think that people are a little bit frozen in their decision. My friends who are in business all say that,
What do they say?
it's slow. That
The decision making is slow?
Yeah.
You actually said that you've spoken to your business friends and they say it's impossible to invest. You don't know who's going to call you up and say that's not the right thing to do. People have told you this?
Yeah, literally.
But you also went on to say that those who are making decisions have been reduced to zombies, which is almost worse than the last days of the UPA.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I said the institutions have been reduced to zombies, which is a different statement, which is the so I think that in the last days of the UPA, the institutions were very assertive. They were doing all kinds of things, and sometimes, shutting down various investment projects, etc. They were very aggressive.
Right.
They had been newly set up. The NGT, for example, is a new institution. It was
The Green Tribunal.
Yeah, it was probably a good idea for the long run. In the short run, it was very assertive, and a lot of business people were resentful of it. Partly they welcomed Mr. Modi because they felt that this was a very, very aggressive institution. I think what has happened now is that these institutions exist.
Right.
So they don't actually, it's not that they've been shut down.
Right.
They exist. So you have to send them a decision. You have to get the decision through them, but they don't take decisions anymore.
Because of this kind of sense of paralysis or fear or whatever it is that has gripped them.
Yeah.
But what
I want to
insist
that we should talk about my book and not about my view of Indian politics. That's not the brief of this conversation.
Okay,
my publishers will kill me if I don't insist.
I'll absolutely come to the book. I just wanted to ask you one last question though, because what has happened is that, and this is inevitable in the times that we're in, that you have sort of been drawn into a political crossfire. And I'm sure you've heard the Commerce Minister say that Abhijit Banerjee won the Nobel Prize. I congratulate him. But you all know what his understanding is. His thinking is totally left-leaning. He praised the Nyaya scheme effusively. This is the Congress scheme with which you consulted. But the people of India totally rejected his thinking.
So I feel that what's not helpful in that kind of comment is more the questioning of my profession or our professionalism. I think the reason we were given this prize is partly because we are professionals.
Right.
If the BJP had government, like the Congress party, had asked me what are the numbers on the fraction of people under this income or that income,
right,
would I have not told them the truth? I would have told them exactly. I would have been as willingly and as, in terms of being a professional, I want to be a professional with everybody.
Right. You're not partisan in your political
I'm
approach.
not partisan in my economic thinking.
Right.
I might be privately partisan about various things.
Sure,
all of
we
us
all
are.
yes.
But in terms of the economics that I want people to take seriously, I'm not partisan at all. If somebody asks me a question, I don't question their motives. I think that this is a legitimate economics question.
Fair enough.
And I will answer it. We work, as I was maybe telling you, that we work with any number of state governments, many of which are BJP governments. We worked with the Gujarat Pollution Control Board when Gujarat was under Mr. Modi. And we actually had excellent experience. I would say that the experience was that they were willing to engage with the evidence, and they implemented policies that followed from that experience. There was no, I didn't feel that we were being treated as a political animal. We were specialists who had something useful to say, like you would have a mining engineer.
Sure.
And I feel a bit like I want to place myself mostly as a professional. In this space, I want to be I'm a professional.
That was interesting. You mentioned that, in fact. You said that it's not just Gujarat, but you're working with Haryana and many other states, which are run by the BJP.
UP. I mean, we have no problem working with any state. We were in India. We'll work with any state that's interested in having rigorous evaluation of its policies or wants a rigorous consultation on policy choices. We are happy to work with them. We have no particular reason to work with one or the other. We value seriousness and willingness to solve a problem.
Fair enough. Let's come then to the questions that you tackle in your book and your books, which in a sense draw from what you're saying. Because many of the concerns that you raised about the Indian economy and the steps that are required to correct it, some would say bring in a measure of macroeconomic and political complexity, while the sort of work that you do, which is the randomized field trials and the interventions that they require, are much more localized. And you must have heard that there is also an increasing critique of that approach, which says that it ignores the macro complexity, the political complexity. How would you respond to that?
Look, I think that is it useful to know that a particular strategy for boosting immunization, like the work we did in Haryana, does it work? I think it's useful to know that. Is that answer the question of, is this everything you can do to boost immunization? No. I mean, I'm sure if we could make everybody much better off, maybe they'll be more aware and they would have more leisure, and they'll all kinds of possibilities. We only explore certain particular strategies, the ones that governments think are plausible, and that doesn't exclude the possibility that there are many other ways to skin that cat.
Sure.
And
so you're not sort of rigid on the point of view that this is the only way to tackle the great challenges of our times, like poverty.
On the other hand, I do feel that it's a good lever. If you have a problem, we can improve your immunization rates by 20%. You should be pleased about it. And then maybe perfection is still far away.
Right. But there's another critique, which is that, and this is made by those like Angus Deaton, who's a Nobel laureate himself, who says that what may work in one context may not work in another. To that you would say what?
I mean, I think that's fair, but it's not that we do one thing once and then immediately say that, look, we have the solution to all your problems. We try things out once. If it works, we try it in a different context with slightly more challenging circumstances. Then we try it again. Some of these things on which we have now come to firm conclusions, we've done 8-10 different studies, and different places, different, microcredit, we have done any number of studies, maybe 10-12 studies from across the world.
Okay. Before we came to the conclusion that microcredit isn't going to be a solution for, deep poverty. What would you cite as examples from your own work, and you refer to some of it in your book, as examples of your interventions which have also traveled across context, if any come to mind?
So microcredit is a good one. Microcredit, I think the first evaluation we did was in India.
Right.
And we found that it had no impact on the average earnings of the families. Then our colleagues in JPAL did similar evaluations in Mongolia, in Bosnia, in Mexico, in Peru, in all kinds of different places, and found very similar things.
Right.
This Ethiopia, they basically all of them find the same thing.
Okay, so microcredit is one example.
And so therefore then we came out and said, look, I don't think there is any evidence that microcredit is going to solve the problem of of people's livelihoods.
Right.
It might be a good thing because maybe people need credit, but it's not going to solve the problem of livelihoods. There was a global effort to nail down.
Okay, so that's one example of something which.
Yeah.
So in terms of this question of livelihoods, which is something that we are grappling with now very actively, what is something that you found
so
has
we
worked?
actually have done something like that because we did this intervention again in a bunch of different countries, 7 countries, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Ethiopia, Ghana, Guatemala, or no, Honduras, and Peru, I think. I might get 1 or 2 of these countries wrong, but I think we did the same intervention, which is giving people, very poor people, an asset.
Right.
Giving them an asset and giving them some training and hand-holding with it.
For example? Like an asset of,
asset is a cow, a set of goats, a couple of cows, a bunch of trinkets you can sell, but also training with it. The women who were going to sell the trinkets, they actually didn't know how to go to the market, the wholesale market, so you have to show them where the bus goes, go with them to the bus. These are often people who have never had a business in their lives.
And that actually
and now we
has
look
a
at these people
impact.
10 years later, and they're still much richer than the people who were in the control group. So 10 years later, they're still better off. And we did this in, as I said, in a bunch of countries.
Right.
We find systematically the same thing, durable, long-term effects of this.
So just that one small intervention of introducing an asset can have this very profound effect.
Yes, long-term, durable effect on the lives of people.
And the idea of having a sort of a cash transfer or a sort of a universal income, is that again something which you think is
something we are testing? I have no idea. We're doing a very large randomized control trial of it in Kenya, giving several thousand people guaranteed income for 11 years.
Right.
So significant guarantee. So we'll see if it works or not. It's exactly the kind of question that a randomized control trial is beautifully designed for.
Seeking to ask.
Yeah.
Regardless of the debates over randomized control or trial, the fact is that this prize, for the moment at least, has been claimed by India, though it's shared by the 3 of you. France has claimed France, India has claimed India. To what extent would you credit India with your arc as an economist? Because I know that you've done time in JNU, you've done time at Presidency.
And I didn't.
And then you finished off at Harvard.
But much of my research is also in India, and so is Esther's.
Right.
Both of us, I think, bulk of our research is in India. I think we learned sort of the core ideas that we wrote up in poor economics. A lot of those came out of kind of stuff that you see and hear working on the ground in India. It's a very much an India. That book is a very much an India-inspired,
India-rooted book. This one is much more global in scale.
Much more global, exactly.
So, is it true that you went to jail when you were in JNU?
Yes, to Tihar, no less. It was maximum security prison.
What was it? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was some reason which I don't remember anymore. There was a protest, and in the protest they had decided that the president of JNU Students' Union should be expelled. So he was expelled. He was unusually, he was not from the SFI or something. He was from one of the Lohiite groups. So there was it was an odd moment in a sense, and he was expelled. So I think that then the student body felt, and I felt, that this was exactly what student democracy cannot allow.
Right.
You can kind of not do what we want. That's I'm legitimate decision.
Fair enough.
And so we protested. There was a ghera of the vice chancellor, and then the police came and
off you went. But I heard you say somewhere that JNU was an important learning because it sort of politicized you.
Yes.
And to that extent, are you, I don't know, amused or surprised when you see all this noise around JNU and how it's being seen as some kind of haven of
it's unfortunate
dissent
because remember, one of the people who I knew well, and we were often even on at least often on similar sides on certain issues, was Nirmala Sitharaman.
Right. So you knew her in JNU?
Yeah, she was my contemporary in JNU. She knew me, I knew her, and we were, I wouldn't say we were close friends, but we were friends, and it's not that we had deep disagreements. There were lots of people in JNU with different views. There was a reasonably diverse set of opinions, and it was great because I think it makes you sort of engage with the nature of India in a sense, in a very deep way, because it's a place where there are lots of people coming from different backgrounds. Right. People like where I went to Presidency College, there was a very homogeneous upper caste Bengali institution.
Right.
Here
JNU is much more diverse,
enormously diverse. We met lots of people who were very different from us,
right.
And that's what I mean by politicized. I understood what caste meant. In upper caste Bengali, caste doesn't exist.
But this is the problem that we're confronting at the moment. That whole idea is under so much attack. Not just JNU, but the very idea of having a critical view.
But I mean that. You're right that it's something that we need to defend. I also believe that it's also important that it's important to have an institution where being critical is one thing, being able to discuss with civility diverse views is another thing.
Yes.
And both of those are important. I think at JNU, one of the things, we had very diverse views. There were people from the RSS. There's one of the most charming and polite people in my class in JNU was
from the RSS?
First from the RSS.
The RSS will be very happy to hear you say this, because at the moment you're being painted into
but
an ideologically different corner.
It was true. He was charming. He was very well spoken. He was unfailingly polite,
right?
So you learn all kinds of things. I mean, I didn't know the RSS till I came to JNU, because in Bengal there was no RSS then, or at least no visible one. So therefore, it was all. It's part of what made me.
Right. Fair enough. I want to ask you in conclusion, if you could do a randomized controlled trial on how Nobel Prizes can change the life of prize winners, what would that reveal, you think? Other than making you richer by, $1 million?
I hopefully not richer. I think we are going to try to use the money for research rather than for consumption.
Right.
I don't think.
But what? No, that's very worthy that you do that. But what changes? What do you think is going to change about?
I hope
life?
That people will be a bit more open to the idea that we know something useful and that make use of us. As I said, I see myself as a professional,
right?
And I would like to be more useful, less questioned on my particular prejudices, and more trusted for my competence.
Right. And did you manage to? I heard you say on Rajdeep's interview that you were going to have a loud and noisy party with a lot of dancing.
We always have every year.
Have you had that yet?
No. If you are in Boston on the 26th of October, you're welcome to come.
Oh, lovely. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to, but if I were, I'd love to come. When you say dancing, what kind of music would you get everybody going?
We are pretty good at music. We do like everything from Taylor Swift to Rihanna to old Bollywood to new Bollywood to Nigerian pop. You're pretty eclectic.
Yes. Much as with your work, so with music.
But I also like dancing very much.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I'm almost tempted, though I won't yield to the temptation to get you to show me a go-to dance move of Abhijit Banerjee.
But there are many videos of it.
Oh, those videos exist. Okay, we'll have to do some YouTube diving. But Abhijit Banerjee, just before I let you go, one thing did stay with me, though I know you don't want to spend too much time talking about what you said, at the Jindal lecture. But you did say that when it comes to the Indian economy, so you suggested certain steps. You said increase Narega wages, give farmers a better price, and finally pray.
Oh, I believe, like, as I say in this book, this point of this book is that what we know about managing the macroeconomy is extremely scattershot.
Right.
So I think
at some point
prayer is always a good idea.
It's just like the safest bet. Pray and pray like hell.
Yeah.
Abhijit Banerjee, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for talking.
Thank you.